Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast, your weekly look inside the world of fly fishing presented by Pete Tigers. If you're enjoying listening, please consider subscribing.
Aitor Coteron is based in Spain, where he teaches fly casting and guides anglers on his local rivers. He is a passionate dry fly angler who lives and breathes fly fishing. I talk with him about fishing, dry flies, casting, and pick up plenty of tips along the way. Aitor, great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, Pete. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And I usually start these podcasts with the question asking, have you been fishing? And I know we've been in contact a lot recently, and I know you've been fishing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the trip you've just come back or recently come back from?
Yeah, I came back 1 week ago from Maldives for some saltwater fly fishing. In fact, not my first time saltwater, because I have been fishing for pike and sea trout in the Baltic sometimes, but that kind of saltwater in the tropics was new to me. And it has been a fantastic experience, to be honest. Not that much fish as we were expecting, but it's not about the numbers, it's about the experience, So, still floating, I think.
Fantastic. And what were you catching, Aitor?
Well, our main target was giant trevally, as you may suppose. But I don't know why there weren't present in the flats. We were searching for 3 weeks in a row. And we just spotted 2 or 3 GTs far away. But okay, there were some groupers, some snappers, some bluefin trevally to put in and enjoy. So nice experience.
Nice. Now, I've been fortunate enough to fish in the Maldives, and even more fortunate, I managed to catch a permit as well. Did you see any of those?
No, not really. I thought I had caught one, but it was a dart, finally. Looking on the internet, looks strange for a permit, maybe it's the Indo-Pacific. No, it wasn't. So anyway, no problem. Lots of new species and very interesting experience.
And I'm a big fan of the underdog fish, and I always talk about snook. But I also think bluefin trevally are a fabulous quarry as well. I once described bonefish as Nijinsky, the great ballet dancer, and the bluefins are more like Mike Tyson, I think. Did you fall under their spell?
Yeah, they are like street fighters, to be honest. Very interesting. Only the take is just puts you on your heels, because it's incredible how they attack the fly. And just to explain one anecdote, we were fishing with 0.50 millimeters tippets the first day, and the first take from a bluefin trevally snapped the 0.50 millimeters like a trout snapped the 7x. For kilo trout snapping 7x. So we said, okay, come on, 0.90 or maybe 1 millimeter thick tippets, and that's all. Amazing fish, yes. Very beautiful, very amazing, yeah.
Yeah, they're
to be honest.
They are stunning. And did you see I think it's the sort of case there, isn't it, that you might see a mix of fish rather than lots of one sort of species. And again, when I was out there, my friend Mark, he caught a bonefish as well, and he'd been out there for quite some time and hadn't seen many, and then caught a nice bonefish. Did you see any of those as well?
No, only a couple of times we saw some full of bonefish, but 3 or 4 of them far away. I don't know. It seems like in the Maldives there are different scenarios. You look at the internet and see that they are catching bonefish somewhere and GTs, and in this particular atoll, we haven't seen them. I don't know why. We have been fishing like crazy from dawn to sundown, and no, not really. I don't know why. It's strange because in the deeper water it's absolutely full of fish. If you were fishing with locals jigging, for instance, it's incredible. The amount of fish there are down there is amazing. But for some reason, they are not so keen on entering the flats. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if there's, because I would think, let's use bonefish as an example. I don't understand whether they are creatures of habit, and so whether they come to the same flat, or if it is the case that there's so many places that they can go to that they travel. But I don't get the sense that they're a nomadic species, that they're moving, but perhaps they do. I honestly don't know. But it's an interesting, you kind of walk along the flat, don't you, in places like that, and you just don't know what's going to come up, do you?
Yeah, we're walking lots of flats every day. And the question is that our boatman, I don't want to call him a fly guide because he's not a fly fishing guide. He's a fishing guide for spinning and jigging, but not for fly fishing. So we were studying on the internet, on Google Maps, all the area around the atoll, and found that there were lots of interesting places for looking for fish for the flats normally. But for some reason, not so many fish entering the flats. I don't know why, and who knows, but it's strange, as I was saying, because the deeper water is absolutely full of fish, grouper, snapper, tuna, GTs, everything. So, next time.
Yeah, there's always next time, isn't there? Yeah, that reminds me of one of my most gentlemanly things that I've ever done. That the gentleman Mark, who I said was out there, I think he was out there doing something along the lines of trying to get a resort into fly fishing, and he spent, I think it sounds a fabulous job. I think he was out there for a month or so, and it was our trip coincided with his last couple of days, so I got to fish with him a little bit. And on his last evening, we were walking along the flat and we saw two fish tailing, and he said, GT, and I said, well, they got the sickle fin. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. They were the two of the biggest permit I've ever seen. And the gentlemanly thing about this was that I said, look, man, it's your last day. You have a go. And he did. He covered them beautifully. He did everything perfectly. And they just did what permit do. Buggered off in and were gone. But they were big fish. I still, when we're talking about this in my mind's eye, I can think about those fish and think what an amazing sight they were, tailing in just in gentle surf, and were absolutely fabulous. So, yeah, those fish haunt you the whole time, don't they? But are you going to go back?
Yeah, sure. As soon as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe exploring some other areas, or who knows. Yeah.
Yep. Sure. And so the salt. Nice. And the saltwater bug has bitten quite deeply by sounds of it.
Sorry?
The saltwater bug has bitten you quite deeply.
Yeah, sure. It's completely different because I am a trout fisherman, to be honest, and dry fly trout fisherman mainly. But this is so different and so interesting that, yeah, you have to go again.
Fantastic. Sure. That's great to hear. Now, for our listeners, can you tell me where you're based, Aitor?
Yes, I'm based in Bilbao. It's the main city in Basque Country in the north of Spain, close to the Cantabrian Sea. And I have been fishing for as long as I can remember. I think my first small minnow, I caught when I was 5 years old, more or less, with a pin and a worm. And from there, my grandfather was a salmon fisherman and trout fisherman. And he showed my interest in fishing, and he took me under his wing. So I started fishing for trout when I was 12 years old with a bubble float and the Spanish traditional wet flies. But even then, I was interested in the fly line, It was something very strange in Spain at that time. Not many people doing it. And I don't know where I saw something. And I even bought a book about fly fishing with proper fly fishing gear. And I started dreaming about it. But my grandfather wasn't very keen on it, and he always said to me, no, that kind of technique is for the American rivers. And I said, come on, America. America's super big, my friend. What's the point of America? America has big rivers, small rivers, everything. And they use this technique. No. So I had to manage by myself. And finally, I forgot about the spinning and devoted totally to the fly fishing with a fly line. And that's all, more or less.
What fascinates me actually is that, and I've apologies to my listeners that I've talked about that I was fortunate enough to fish out in Spain on the road towards Andorra. And it's funny you mentioned about America because I've got a photo and I showed it to somebody recently of where we fished. And I said it reminded me of North America, funnily enough. And yeah, absolutely. And the river there was just like one you might fish in America, and it was beautiful. The other thing that I was thinking about that you said, there wasn't much of a scene in Spain when you first started. And I have a friend of mine, Rafa, who lives in Lyon, and I guided him. And subsequently, other Spanish anglers I've met, they've been some of the most gifted, experienced and knowledgeable people I've met. Now, does that mean it's a small group that are talking to each other, sharing ideas, or is it is a big scene of fly fishing for trout in Spain generally?
No, they are the biggest scene. Now, I am talking about when I was 12 years old. It is 50 years ago, So things had to change a lot. In the meantime, in those times, everybody almost, I don't know, maybe 99.99% of the people were fishing with live bait or spinning, bubble float or some spinners. But now things have changed, of course, and there is a big scene of fly fishing with the fly line, for sure. Leon is mecca of the fly fishing in Spain, for sure.
Yeah. And so does that mean that the bubble float and spinning was used to fish with, obviously, but was it used for people to catch fish to take home? And with the growth in fly fishing, did that mean as a result of that, more people were turning to catch and release as well? Or would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, that's true. In those times, catch and release was totally unheard. And people wouldn't believe that somebody is going to the river for trout and release a trout that has the legal size. But now things have changed a lot. Not as much as I would like, because there is a lot of people still taking too many trout home, but things are completely different now. If that's the reason is for fly fishing with the fly line or not, I don't know, but obviously the difference is very, very, very big now.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you tell us what the native species are? Is it brown trout, rainbow trout? You have some brook trout, I guess, as well. What is the native species?
Rainbow trout and brook trout are introduced. The only species is brown trout. There are different subspecies. Mainly in the north, there is the Atlantic strain, and then you have the Mediterranean strain, but brown trout. And rainbow was introduced when I was a kid, and some places have some brook trout that's normally in the Pyrenees, a couple of rivers in the Pyrenees, and it's anecdotal. No? Some other species now that are very interesting for the fly fisher, especially for me, is barbel, because we still have lots of barbel, and some of them are very keen on feeding on the surface for taking the dry fly and feeding on nymphs, and they get a very good size, and it's a nice quarry to target with the fly on there.
I think, if people are regular listeners, they'll know that I talked about this particular trip, and we went packed for trout, and then we discovered the barbel. And that was, we didn't find any rising. We looked really hard, but we were using Euronymph tactics to catch them. And they are a phenomenal alternative to our traditional quarry, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It depends on the species of barbel, because there are maybe 4, 5 or 6 different species of barbel in Spain. Here in the north, we have Grails is the name of that particular species, and they are very keen on taking dry flies. If there is a hatch, they are going to go for the adults. And anyway, you can catch them when they are not looking up with a secret fly, I will tell you, for your next time in the Pyrenees. That's a black beetle in summer. Use a black foam beetle during the summer months with very low water, and you have to make a big splash with the beetle imitation, long leaders, but pretty hefty black beetle, maybe size 10 or size 8, and making it splash when presenting the fly. And you are going to have some nice barbel on it, promise.
That's a great tip. And, for the listeners, I know where I fished, and I'm sure your rivers are similar as well, that they were crystal clear. And so you could see the fish. And that was equally as thrilling. I'm guessing your streams are pretty similar too, are they?
Yeah, it's normal. Sight fishing is a pretty normal way of fly fishing here, but also fishing blind is very useful. It depends on the conditions. But yes, you can sight fish on the dry, on nymphs, no problem.
Nice. And one of the other things I noticed in one of the pools that I fished, actually in 2 of them, there was some salmon crashing round as well. And there is a run of salmon. Is there a salmon scene as well? Do you like to look for salmon? Do you get them locally, or was it just where I was fishing there?
Well, Spain was famous for salmon, but in the last, 40 or 50 years, the fishing has crashed almost completely. I will put you an example. From Bilbao, the nearest famous salmon river is Ason. It's around 70 kilometers to the west. And in the late 50s and early 60s, the salmon catch there in a season, and I mean salmon catch, legal salmon, it was around 1,500, 1,800 salmon per year. Illegal, nobody knows. Now, the catch in Ason is 6 salmon a year, 7 salmon a year, so it's almost extinct. And I don't know why the administration doesn't want to address the situation properly, and they still allow killing fish. And very sad that the situation is not very good. Now, the only place with some salmon fishing is Asturias. It's around 200 kilometers to the west of Bilbao, but very poor numbers, and every year it's getting worse. So the trout scene is getting better, but the salmon scene is going worse and worse every year. And the trout scene is getting better because, as you mentioned, Leon, before, Castilla y León is the region, and some years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, they implemented the policy of catch and release in lots of rivers, and it is now giving fruit. So, yeah, the trout fishing is improving, but salmon fishing, I think, is lost, to be honest.
That's a great shame to hear. Interesting, we mentioned, Leon, again, that if you are a fly dresser, fly tyer, the Coq de Leon, that's the home, isn't it?
Yeah. Very, very famous material to tie. It was the main material for the traditional wet flies, for the wings of the wet flies. And now it's especially used for tails of dry flies and wings of caddis, or sedge, as you say, for the dry fly fishermen.
Yeah, I remember Stuart Minikin wrote me a piece for the online magazine I used to run, and he fished in Leon and came back. I remember one of the photos we used was he'd pulled a lot of Coq de Leon and tide flies as a result with it. So trout are I guess it's fair to say then, trout and barbel, but trout probably edge it for you. It sounds as though you've said that you are primarily a dry fly angler. Are you the sort of angler that likes to use many patterns, or do you like to use few patterns and concentrate on a variety of that pattern in a number of sizes? How do you like to look at things?
I think your second option is the good one for me. I think that presentation is, I would say, 90%. Talking about percentages is not used, but I would say that presentation is the key. So before changing a fly, I need to assure myself that my presentation was good. And if there are 2, 3, or 4 passes of a fly that has been drifting properly and have been refused, okay, I can think of changing. But maybe, as you said, not changing the pattern, or only changing the size, for instance. Or changing the position on the water, maybe a little bit higher or a little bit lower. And I prefer to use that approach, that changing patterns, because years ago I had with me on the river, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 boxes full of dry flies that I never used. Every year I said to myself the same, what's the point of taking all this stuff with me I'm not using? So finally I said, no, I will take 1 box and that's all. So I think that approach is the good one. And I think that having some emergers, some caddis in different sizes and colors, and maybe a beetle. Always, I have some black beetles with me, always, for sure. You never know when they are going to work. And some nymphs, just in case. But I prefer to go on the minimalist side in that regard, to be honest.
Yeah, my job after we've spoken, I've been out, I think as a casting instructor, you'll approve that I've been out before we started recording this, and we'll come on to casting shortly, but I've been out practicing my casting. I've not been 100% happy with it, and I think part of it is that I've not been fishing a lot over the winter, and then I've not really done much trout fishing. Well, I've not done any at this stage. I've been waiting, as you say, for the rising fish. But my job is to thin out the fly box. I've got too many nymphs at the moment because I don't use a great deal of them. So I'm going to spend some time sorting that out. But something you said to me was really interesting, in that if the fly's passed over the fish 3 or 4 times and it's not eating it, then you'll start to reassess. Does that mean that you are fishing the water, or does that mean that you are fishing to a fish that you've seen rise?
Well, I prefer to fish to rising fish, but I don't mind to fish the water. Even if there are no rises, I start fishing with the dry fly, fishing blind instead of using a nymph, because I like to see the fly floating on the surface. I don't know why, but I like to see it. And people say, okay, put the nymph because we are going to take more fish. Okay, but just first couple of hours at least, I prefer to see my fly drifting properly. Who knows? But yes, to me it's important to assess that drift is good. And I think that it's a tricky thing to assess, to be honest, because years ago, I was given for granted that some of my drifts were very good. Till I met one, now a very, very good friend of mine in Bosnia that I visit every year. And he's one of the best fishermen I have met and very, very good guide as well. And he taught me how to assess properly what a good drift is. And I said to him, I've been doing stupid things all my life. Because what I thought was, okay, it's drifting a little bit, doing this strange thing, but it doesn't matter. Oh, my friend, yes, it does. It does matter a lot. And he showed me so many times, for instance, you are covering a nice railing, rising, and he telling me, Aitor, that cast was shit, to be honest. Really? Yes, shit. Oh, it's drifting properly. No. Don't you see that small tension? And you look and say, okay, yes, I see some small tension. He's right. But till now, I wasn't giving it the attention I should have been giving it. So, okay, cast again. Again. He told me, a little bit better, but still, you see, yes, I see something. Let's try again. Okay, cast again. And he told me, it is going to take that one. And the girl intrigued. And I said to me, now I'm starting to see something different. And that's the reason I was talking about that 3 or 4 proper drifts over the fish. But the main thing is proper. Be sure that it's drifting cleanly and properly, not doing some small strange things that from your position, seem that it doesn't matter, but from the position of the fish, matters a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nice. There's something you said to me, and we're going to come on to this in a second for what you've just said there about drift and everything else. But what you said about you like to fish a dry fly because you like seeing it on the surface. Now, that's a lovely way to look at it, and it's really made me smile because, as myself, predominantly a dry fly angler as well, I always worry. I do it because I like doing it and it's fun and I like seeing that fish come up and eat it. I don't do it because I feel it's better. I just do it because it's fun. But you've summed that up perfectly, and that sort of knocks the purist argument out the window, and I really like that. So I'm going to steal that myself and say it's just nice to see the fly on the surface of the water. Yeah. And I love that. That approach is wonderful. And the drag, again, I've talked so many times on this about drag, and one of the easy ways I've always felt when I was a guide that you could see it, I would show my guest the fly line by them, and if there was a bow downstream of them a little bit, that means there's that tension that you talked about, so you know it's going to be dragging even if you can't see it there or detect it. And so that was a really easy way to show people that there was an issue there and there was too much tension and there was a drag there. So, and of course, like I say, we're going to come on to the casting in a second and how to overcome that as well. But I wanted to think about our quarry as well. Excuse me. And if we have seen a fish rise, what about those rise forms? What are you taking from a rise form that helps you think about that fly selection? Because I've always thought about rise forms as giving us an idea of what stage of the hatch the fish is actually on. But I wondered if you could take that a little bit further and how you interpret rise forms for our listeners, that if they're on the river, there's something that they may be able to detect from seeing a rise form and perhaps what stage of the hatch the fish might actually be on.
Well, I'm not an expert in that department, to be honest. I have read about it in the innumerable books I have behind me, but I prefer to see from a close position, if it is possible. They say that their head and tail is fish taking emergers and all that, but I have seen so many exceptions to that who knows? I don't know for sure, but I normally fish most of the time I fish in Bosnia, to be honest, because I reached an agreement with my wife, and she told me, okay, you go every time to Bosnia, maybe once or twice a year. Okay, when you are here, please don't go the weekends to Leon to fish again. And of course, she was right. So we reached an agreement in that. And in Bosnia, it's pretty easy to choose a fly normally because they take emergers 99% of the time. So, and if not, you are looking so close to the fish that you can see what they are taking normally. So I don't know for sure. I'm not an expert in that department, to be honest. But I think that CDC emerger, in fact, shuttlecock for you, it's the king of flies in Bosnia, for sure. It works everywhere, every time, in different colors and sizes. So for me, that's the number one fly to use.
And that's music to my ears because I pretty much fish Paul Proctor's pearl butt emerger, which is a shuttlecock. And in a size 14, for whatever reason, smaller doesn't work for me. On the river I fish, that just works fabulously well. And I'm kind of with you on the rise thing. Yes, there are things that we can see, like you say, the head and tails, or if they're just gently sipping spinners or whatever that may be. But I've seen fish and I've cast at fish that are gently sipping away, and I cast at them. I think I've identified the hatch. I think I know what they're feeding on, and I cast to them and they absolutely explode on the fly. Yeah. Now, that may be the same. I've also, and I think I may have mentioned before, I've also got this theory that it may be that same fish, but it may be someone else in the vicinity has come in and said, I'm having that before the guy there. Yeah, so it does go to show, and the streams you're fishing in, I know, are crystal clear and easy to identify, I guess, akin to our chalk streams in the ability to see them. I don't get to see that, so I make my best guess, but I'm often proven wrong by that. So I think that's absolutely fine. I think if you're aware of what they're doing, if you spent time watching, then that's actually going to pay off for you.
I remember reading Gary LaFontaine years ago, and there was a thing that was very interesting because he said that he always had with him a pair of binoculars just to see what the fish were taking. He wasn't talking about the rise forms. He was just looking exactly where the insect the fish were taking and the stage of that insect with a pair of binoculars. And I think it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's a really good tip. I like that one as well. So I'm sure I'll forget it in the excitement, but it's a really good way. I think what we're getting out of this segment is observation still, isn't it? And spend time watching, be aware, overcome the drag if you can. Does that mean that leader length, diameter, and setup is really important to you as well?
Yeah, sure. Leader is very, very important. And keep it for sure. Not in the sense that most of the people think saying, okay, you need a very, very thin tippet because the fish is going to see it or not. Okay, I think if the fish has to fly here, just centimeters from its size, it can see 7x, 8x, or 5x, exactly the same. The difference is in the drift. The difference is in the different stiffness of a 7x tippet compared to a 5x tippet. It's completely different. The thinner the tippet, the more morbid it is on the water, and the more it gets mixed with or can counteract all those currents. So lengthening your tippet and making it thinner is not for to try to hide the things that are going to cheat the fish, but just to make a longer drift and more free drift, for sure. So for me, a long leader is a must normally. At least 4.5 meters long, normally from 5.5 to 6 or 7 meters long, depending on the conditions. Yeah. And
nice.
Maybe 1.5, at least 1.5 or 2 meters long. Normally 6x, 7x, but depends on the conditions, of course. If you are in New Zealand, 7x is suicidal. But if you are in Bosnia, 7x is a must. So, as usual, it depends on the conditions and on what the fish are imposing on you.
And do you tie your leaders yourself in entirety? And also, the other question: is there a brand of tippet that you're keen to use that does the job for you?
No, normally I use commercial leaders, maybe 9 foot long or 12 foot long, depending on what I'm going to use, and then add some tippet. Some maybe some ring, or without it depends. Adding tippet and that's all. I don't like to have many knots around because they are only for trouble. And I think that the commercial leaders are very well studied and very well made. So, no, doesn't matter to me. Just adding length of tippet you need and fish with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'm exactly with you.
Brands, I'm very accustomed to use frog hair, and I have a lot of confidence on it. But now here in Spain is very famous trout hunter. Very, very expensive material, very good material for sure. But I'm still using frog hair. I'm very happy with it.
Great. I think, like you say, a lot of it is confidence, isn't it? And I've done it in the past where you change a brand for whatever reason. It may be I've run out and had to go and buy a spool very quickly, and it may not be the one that I'm normally using. And then you may bust up on a fish, and you suddenly, it gets in your head a little bit, and you can't use that for a while. And then we all circle, don't we, on something? Yeah, that one hasn't let me down. And it's the same, the supple flex leaders work for me, and I've used them for years, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who will say, well, it hasn't worked for me, so I don't use it. Tippet rings, really interesting. I sort of fall in and out of love with them. There's no particular reason. They're quick and easy to change as well, aren't they? And if you're changing tippet or whatever, it's a lot easier from that point of view. Have you stuck with tippet rings over a long period of time? And have you any observations as a plus or a minus against them?
I like them because they are very useful for not eating up your leader when you have to change flies or you are fishing for 2 weeks in a row, and you don't need to get out of leaders. But sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't, because I find it quicker to not a new tippet now and forget about the tippet ring, because my site is not what it was, and now you have to take the fucking ring and blah 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 blah. So I say no, let's make a double sturgeon and that's it. But yes, I find tippet ring is very useful.
Yeah. And also, if you're going to quickly add a dropper and put a nymph on the end and a tag dropper on there, it's a really quick and easy way to do that as well. I may even, funnily enough, where I was just casting a few moments ago, that I treated myself to the new season to a new leader. I try and make a leader last as long as I possibly can. Tippet rings will obviously make that happen as well. Yeah. But I'm going to try and make this one last a season as well. So I thought I'd treat myself, get where you are with the eyesight as well. And I've got a pair of glasses in my waders ready. Every year I say, come on, one more season. I think this might be the one, unless it's a bright sunny day, that those glasses come out a little bit more regularly. So we'll see. It's funny for me, whenever I put glasses on, it seems to help my eyesight for a bit. And I had my eyes lasered many years ago. And funnily enough, my friend in Leon, Rafa, that's how I met him. He's an eye surgeon. And he says if you've had them lasered, it does make your eyesight last that little bit longer so that you can tie flies. So one more season, that's all I ask. Of course, at the start of the next one, I will ask for one more season, as I always do. But as I said, I haven't... Yeah, I wish.
I have been using progressive, polarizing glasses progressive for 5 or 6 years now. So that's the question of getting old.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not so much fun, is it? One of the things actually I've done, because I noticed another friend of mine who's a doctor said that it's the contrast and not being able to do it. And when you're trying to tie with sunglasses on particularly, it was a little bit more difficult, and I was always flipping my sunglasses off so that I could see a little bit better. But I bought on Amazon for £15 only a pair of photochromic polarized glasses. No, these are just sunglasses, and they're really, really good, I have to say. So I'm interested to see how they'll perform over the summer. But it also helps from that point of view, where I was using darker glasses all of the time. I'm kind of like that. They were only £15, so we'll see how we get on with those as well. But as a casting instructor as well, I felt I should ask you about fly lines and the choice of fly line. Is that a key thing for you in your setup?
Well, I don't know. I love all fly lines. I think maybe I have, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 now in the box here behind me. What I want now is WF, because they have so many different tapers that it's crazy. And it normally depends on the kind of fishing I'm going to do, because if I'm going to use very long leaders and I'm expecting some wind, I will choose a taper that puts some weight on the tip of the line. And it depends, but normally, yes, I think that choosing a fly line is the most important thing before the rod. I want to know what line I'm going to use, and from that I will choose the rod I'm going to use as well. But I don't have any favorite. I have been using everything from Rio to Royal Wolf to Scientific Anglers to Guideline to everything. So there are lots of nice lines around now. So I think it is about practice. Yeah. Most of it. Training is the key.
Yeah, nice. I like that. And also when it comes to rods as well, getting that line to match the rod is really key. And I guess if you've got a large selection of lines, you can really spend some time. And it's one of my favorite things to do when I get a new rod, is to find the right fly line that works obviously with the conditions, but also makes that rod feel comfortable for me. And that's a very personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly the same I'm having in mind now, because we have been testing some new rods from Guideline on our last trip in Maldives, and I fell in love with a combination of an LPX rod also fly reel, and I don't remember what name was the line, but it was beautiful combo. 7 weight, 9 foot 3 inches long rod, was beautiful. Why? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but there are some combinations that you say, this is what matches me perfectly. So who knows? Yes, but I think that you have to change lines and try them with different rods and see what's a good thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting, you mentioned the guideline rods there as well, because one of the tips I try my best to give to listeners is that if a rod company makes their own fly lines, there's a pretty good chance the prototypes have been cast with those lines as well. So that's a really good place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, for sure. But as I said, I think that's so personal, as you said as well, so personal that, I don't know, there are rods, famous rods that for some people are classics and it's the top of the top, and for other people it's nothing. I'm talking now about, I don't know, some famous rod. Winston IM6. I don't want that rod around me because I don't like that slow flexing. For some people it's top of the top. For me, it isn't. But that's the reason for trying different things and seeing what's matching your feelings or sensations. I don't know.
Yeah, it's nice getting that combination. And I love when I pick up a friend's rod and they've got that balance really well and you think, wow, that's really nice. And the one that I've just been casting, I spent time with different lines and I've got a combination that works really well. There's no need for me whatsoever to change it. It does everything I want to do, from throwing heavy metal with nymphs to casting a dry fly with ease, and I feel comfortable. And I think the key thing as well, isn't it, Aitor, is feeling confident when you've got that fish rising in front of you. You know that cast is going to be easy because your setup is nicely balanced and ready to go, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Although it depends on the size of the fish. Because sometimes when I have been confronted with a big fish in New Zealand and a pretty easy cast, it wasn't easy at all. It was trembling and telling to me, come on, Aitor, please make that fucking cast. And no, I was there and come on. So,
I think we've all been there, haven't we?
The good gear is the first thing to have.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. We still get excited about it, and everyone fluffs a cast, don't they, with excitement. There's nothing wrong with being excited about it. There's nothing wrong.
Very wrong.
I'm getting to the age now that when I get excited when I see a new river, I have to have a pee first as well. So that tells me I know I'm in the right place as well. So talking about getting older and stuff like that, but that if I know I've landed in the right place, I have to have a pee first. So I'm ready to go. But so you mentioned the Winston rods and deeper loading rods and everything else. Does that mean you prefer more moderate or stiffer action rods? Is that your preference for your fishing?
I prefer rods a little bit more stiff. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not an advocate of this rod or that rod. I always tell my students, okay, you try, and you will find eventually what matches your sensations or your taste, and that's all. Because yesterday some student was asking me, what do you think about this rod or that rod? It doesn't matter what I think about that rod, because what matters is what do you think? What do you think about that rod? Not my idea about it. So I think it's a question of trying, and eventually you will find what is your rod, for instance, or your rods, because I have some favorites, several of them. But who knows, maybe in 3 years' time, there is another favorite and that one is forgotten or almost forgotten. Who knows? But I'm more advocate of technique and training and of choosing gear. Although I am a fetishist of and rods and everything. But to be honest, I think that technique is everything, and the rest is cosmetics. Okay, it's important because I think that we fly fish because of the aesthetics, but you have to keep that in the place it belongs, because I think that technique is king here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that brings us, you brought us perfectly to one of the next questions I wanted to ask. And, I've said that you're a fly fishing instructor, you're a fly fishing guide. Where did that journey start and why did that start for you? Was it a conscious decision to say, actually, I want to improve my casting as well, and then I want to teach people fly casting? What route did your journey take?
Yes, well, it was some natural road to take, I think, because when I started fishing with the fly rod, what I found my biggest problem was casting, because I knew how to read the water, I knew what the trout were, but casting was a problem for me. And I decided to, especially after my first trip to the United States, when I was suffering a lot with, I remember one afternoon on the Green River, brown trout rising everywhere, it was autumn, so to very small flies. We were using Parachute Adams 26, long leaders with a crazy wind, and my fly was everywhere, but in the right place. So I came back home and said, okay, I have to learn how to cast properly. And I started learning it first from books, then from some people around that were woodcasters, and they were taking their first tests from what was then the FFF. And they were the first instructors in Spain, and I made friends with them, and I started learning a lot from books and from other instructors. So after that, I liked so much the casting scene that I became a geek. So I decided to be a casting instructor myself. So that's the story.
Nice. And what did you take from that aside from improving your casting? Did you learn something from that process more so as yourself as an angler, but also as somebody who picks up a fly rod? What did you take away most from that part of becoming an instructor?
Well, first of all, sorry, I love fly casting because I think that most of the magic of fly fishing is about the cast, about the line, the air, perfect line. Even when you are taking nothing, I have a pleasure when I am on the river and say, okay, I will place my fly there, and I am seeing a pretty tricky current there. I'm going to make it, I don't know, maybe a reach, and then I combine it with a small curve here, and I will see what's happening. And maybe there is no fish there, but I have a lot of pleasure doing those things because it's part of the fishing as well. So for me, it's key, fly casting, because it's key in catching fish, and it is key in enjoying the river, because enjoying the river is much more than catching those fish. So I have no regrets in that regard. I'm still learning a lot about fly casting. Every day I read something about it. Even sometimes write something about it as well. And I think that every fly fisher should take at least a little bit of attention, putting some attention on his fly casting. Fortunately, now nymph fishing without the fly line is very popular here in Spain. There are lots of new fly fishers that haven't used the fly line out of the tip ring of their rods. So I think that fly casting is not having a good time here now. But anyway, I love it, and I think that's absolutely basic in this sport.
Yeah, I think that's why I love it so much. As somebody who played a little bit of sport, that casting was kind of like holding a racket or a club or a bat or whatever it may be, and always looking to improve it. And here's an interesting thing, that I was trying a double hand rod at the weekend, and my friend, it was a bamboo rod, and my friend Luke Bannister is a casting instructor as well. And he was just saying, stop the rod a little bit higher, stop the rod a little bit higher. And I was drifting the rod back, but I've hurt both of my shoulders, and it becomes difficult to do. So I was sort of bringing the rod around me and making my casting stroke a little bit longer. And I kind of quickly twigged. He said, no, you want to stop it higher, stop it higher. And I figured out by stopping my elbow in tighter, it would give me that higher stop, and then everything slotted into place. And I'm around rods a fair bit and understand fly casting relatively well. But having somebody stand next to me doing that, I cannot, as somebody who's given thousands of hours or many hundreds of hours of casting tuition, there's still nothing. And it even made me realize that somebody pointing something out, and I was able to understand what was causing it, but just putting that right with a little, it's amazing. It made me look at things differently, and I'm really excited to see that aspect of it. It definitely works, and having help from an instructor. My good friend Jim Williams always says, he used to say, how many people play golf? And then say, how many of you put your hand? So, let's say 5 or 6 people put their hands up. How many of you go to the driving range? All of them say, yes, we do. And casting, I think it's a great example of it, and it's a great way to help you enjoy our wonderful pastime a little bit more. What is your piece of advice? What's your best piece of casting advice that you would give someone, be it to look at their casting or perhaps a casting practice drill?
Well, as you said before, I think that's key. Somebody looking from outside, even for casting instructors. I every year go with some friend and tell him, okay, take a look of me, because things look very different from outside. From inside, you, of course, have experience and know what to look at, but things look very different. Even having a slow motion camera, I use it a lot. I've shot hundreds of hours of slow motion. And even using a slow motion camera, every time I use my slow motion camera, I find something, for sure. Something that I say, okay, I never look at this, or I never put attention on this. So I think that's very important. Some tips, it depends on the level of the student, but I think that most of the problems with students are breaking the wrist, normally, and not looking at their backcasts that normally are very, very ugly because they have never looked. And normally, even with people that has no experience with fly casting but has been fishing for many years, forward casts are more or less okay because they have seen so many times these forward casts that, okay, in some way you are going to compensate for errors that maybe you don't know they are there, but you are compensating in some way. But the backcast normally is very, very bad. And as you know, when the backcast is bad, forward cast is a problem. So if I should give a tip, it would be train, read something about fly casting. There are some nice books around. And train looking at your backcast and making horizontal backcast and forward cast. You can see perfectly well your line going backward and going forward, and you only need to check that your loop is narrow enough, not a big loop, not like a wheel, like you need a J, and working that in, I think, 2 or 3 hours doing that during a week, and you are a very different fisherman for sure. I'm sure. I don't know why people are so reluctant to do it, but I tell all my students, you do this half an hour for a week, and you are not going to know yourself next week. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the advice I'd give. The sidecast, have a look at everything and see how your timing looks, how your loops look, the straight line path, everything else that we've talked about. That's music to my ears too. And I think that's
very easy, because there are 3 or 4 things that you have to take into account, nothing less, nothing else. Just timing, wait till everything is straight, just accelerate progressively, first translation, then rotation, and move your rod in a way that your loop is more or less narrow instead of a big wheel, and that's all. And it's very easy if you don't have bad habits. It's very easy to take it in a question of half an hour nailing it. So that would be my tip.
Nice. Perfect. That would have been, if you'd have asked me the same question, that's exactly what I'd have said too. I think that's great advice. Thank you for that. There's something I was thinking about you'd said earlier as well, and I can't remember in what context, but I think about the psychological process of learning as well, and about I think it was where you were talking about drag and, if the fly lands heavy or whatever it might be. But I wonder as well if you say, and I still do this, that if you've hit a good one, I mentally say to myself, that was a good cast. And then if you don't, I wonder if it may help if you say, why wasn't that a good cast? And it's just suddenly popped into my head that second, but, letting yourself know when it's been a good cast, but also, letting yourself know when it's not a good cast. And as instructors, we know when to put it right and how to put it right and what's caused it. But as people perhaps who are not that far as advanced at that sort of level, that being able to detect it wasn't a good cast and then going back to that drill that you said may help you detect those things as well. So it's just something I'm throwing out there as an idea that I wonder, it just sort of came to me while we were talking, really, and something you said made me think about it. And I wonder if that and thinking about, we are, like you said, and I've said, that we get excited when there's a rising fish, but if we stuff it, is it because it was a bad cast? What was bad about that cast?
Yeah.
I wonder what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that when you are experienced in casting, I can feel a bad cast before the loop is formed, for sure. I can feel it, and I'm sure that you can feel it as well. I don't need to see the line to know that cast is going to be a shit. And I think the problem with the students is that they are not accustomed to evaluate their cast. They are not accustomed to know how to read the line. And for me, my classes, it's key to get that thing across. How to read your fly line. How to know if you are doing things correctly or not. Because if you are making mistakes, but you are not aware of those mistakes, you cannot fix that. So first of all, you have to read your line. And it's not that difficult to read the line, because you only need to have a pretty more or less narrow loop with parallel legs, with no waves on them, and that's all. But I don't know why people is not it's not easy for them to understand. So I put an emphasis every time in my classes on reading the line, because tomorrow I'm not going to be there. And I want them to practice. And I want them to practice, but to practice with some brain behind, not making 1,000 casts. What has happened here? I don't know. I have been casting, that's all. No. I prefer you to make 100 casts instead of 1,000, but knowing what has been happening. And I'm going to give you the keys for understanding that if the line is doing this, the problem was here. And if your line is doing this other thing, the problem was here. You have something to check and to fix with every cast. That's key for me.
Yeah, great advice. Excellent. We're going to move on a little bit because we've talked over an hour now, but there was two things that stuck in my mind. You mentioned the Green River, which is in Utah, I believe. Phenomenal fishing. You've mentioned New Zealand, and you're a well-traveled angler. What is the most, or where are the most memorable places? You've mentioned two to me already, but where are the most memorable places that you have fished? And do you have a dream destination that you've never fished?
Well, I have been fishing several places, but I think that the place for me for fishing for trout is New Zealand. That's for sure. It's something very special and something to believe for sure. And you can fish with a dry fly and have amazing trout on the dry fly. And the whole experience is fantastic because it's not about the fish, it's about the ambience, it's about the solitude, being alone for days and days, nobody around. You say, come on, this is incredible. Coming from Europe is something that I think that Kiwis don't understand us when we talk things about Europe and they say, come on, what are you telling me? Because it's crazy. Yes, New Zealand is something to go again as soon as possible. But there are some other places here that I enjoy. I enjoy a lot going for fishing to Bosnia because it's so crystal clear waters, great ambience. I have very, very nice friends there and lots of fish and lots of shots on the dry fly, and I enjoy it a lot. But I would say that New Zealand is something special. And dream place to go. That's several, but maybe Kamchatka would be something interesting to go rafting down those rivers for some big rainbows and mice and floating flies. Yeah, would be.
Nice. That may come around at some stage, but I think you might have to wait a little while for that one. But great choice as well. And, it's just been such a interesting conversation that we've gone in so many directions and so much great information that you've given us as well. So I'd like to say a huge thank you for that. Guiding, instructing, how can people, Aitor, if they want to find you, if they're heading to Spain, if they're listening from Spain, how can they find you? What are your social media handles? How can people find you? And website as well, please.
Yeah, I am on Facebook with my name, Aitor Coteron, and I have a website. It's called on WordPress. It's called One More Last Cast, and they can find me. They're on both sides.
Fantastic. Well, Aitor, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you today, and like I say, covering so many aspects. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I know our listeners will too. So I'd just like to say a really big thank you for taking the time to talk with me in such wonderful English as well. Your English is 1,000 times better than my Spanish, so it's been But thank you so much for talking with me today. Aitor, Coteron, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete, for having me. It has been a pleasure.
Brilliant. And of course, you're going to be appearing in Fly Culture. You sent me a wonderful article that I'm going to be publishing. So welcome to the Fly Culture family as well. It's been great to have you along.
A great pleasure. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of it. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. As always, there will be plenty more coming down the line as well. If you are enjoying it, please consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.